Hello everybody, here we are back for another video. I just got done watching all three The Karate Kid movies, and I thought I'd do a little review on them. Well, first of all, I'm going to get into my classification or the categorization in which I would place these movies in. For me, the best one was the third one. The second one was the second one, and the first one would be my third place one because I feel like the first one, it's kind of slow, right? It takes a little bit to get into it. There's a little bit of teenage type of drama in the beginning, but it eventually like gets going. Now these movies, I thought, they're action movies. They're from the 80s, and they're basically about this kid, right? Daniel LaRusso, who moves in to this new neighborhood in California, in LA, I think, and he's a little bit into karate right in the beginning, but he meets this like maintenance person that lives in the apartment complex, and his name is Mr. Miyagi. Now, Mr. Miyagi starts to basically, at first, their interactions are kind of like, and I kind of like that about the first movie. Their interactions are very natural. You know, it's not like in the beginning, right away, he's like, teach me karate, right? Mr. Miyagi likes trees, and he's kind of like this, like he works with bonsai trees. So he trims them and he kind of like perfects their shape and everything. And you know, LaRusso, he's out there, you know, trying to make friends and everything. And he meets this girl, right? But this girl has an ex, or kind of like a it's complicated relationship with this guy, Johnny Lawrence, right? And Johnny, he's kind of a bully, I guess you could say. He has this clique, and they're all like after you know, whoever gets in their way. So LaRusso just happens to be talking to his girl on the scene at the beach, and you know, he starts to confront him about it, and basically, you know, they become like his bullies. So the movie's very 80s like, where you could say, well, this type of thing wouldn't really be happening nowadays in the 2020s. But, you know, back in the 80s, you know, kids used to just like, you know, fight and whatever, and other kids would bully other kids. Like in this case, Johnny's bullying LaRusso. So he's bullying him, and eventually, you know, he talks to Mr. Miyagi, and Mr. Miyagi's kind of like, well, you know, I'll teach you karate, you know, as a self-defense. But like Mr. Miyagi's philosophy, I don't know if it's intentionally or unintentionally, but his philosophy is basically just like defense, right? Like you're passive all the time. You don't do any harm. You help out people when they need help. And if you got to fight, it's only as a last resort, right? Like you're not going to, you know, fight people just because you know karate. So he's sitting there, you know, Mr. Miyagi, like basically teaching LaRusso, but his philosophy, right? It's very, how can I say it? Like Oriental, right? Like very mystical, kind of a spiritual. And you know, this is the famous movie where he starts teaching him at first by cleaning. So he says, you know, wax on, wax off, clean like this, clean like that, paint my house, right? And then eventually LaRusso gets angry and he's like, well, what are we even doing? You know, you're not teaching me karate. But then he's like, okay, do the moves, right? And as he does the moves, Mr. Miyagi tries to attack him, and LaRusso is able to block off, you know, defend himself with those moves. So long story short, the first movie is basically like him learning karate. You know, there's the bad guy, Johnny Lawrence, who's actually a student of John Kreese. Now, John Kreese owns, or he's the teacher of this dojo, and a dojo is basically like a gym for karate. It's where you can practice your karate, and the dojo is called Cobra Kai. Now, Cobra Kai's philosophy is totally opposite of Mr. Miyagi's philosophy, which is strike first, no mercy, right? No weakness, you know, all attack. So Mr. Miyagi, you know, and LaRusso decide to pay John Kreese and Johnny Lawrence and the Cobra Kai team a visit. So they actually go there to the dojo, to the Cobra Kai dojo, you know, basically to tell them, you know, leave us alone. And John Kreese, he gets all up in Miyagi's face, like, what are you gonna do about it, old man? And Mr. Miyagi's like, well, let's fight, And he's like, yeah, let's fight right here. But he's like, no, this is your territory. Let's do it at the tournament, right? And that's when he starts to train LaRusso, so he can eventually fight Johnny Lawrence in the competition. Which it's a dramatic competition because they have to go through different people, beat different people. But at the end, Cobra Kai is kind of like the how can I say it? Like they exemplify evil, I guess, the bad side, the dark side. They're cheaters. So throughout the tournament, he's like, break his leg, and John Kreese will tell Johnny Lawrence like break his leg and do these type of things to LaRusso so they could beat him. But the thing about Johnny is that he's not really that evil, right? So like towards the end of the movie, LaRusso, the protagonist, in this case the main character, he wins, and Johnny even gives him the trophy, right? Like saying, yeah, you beat me, you're better than me, right? So I think that was kind of like a way of saying Johnny Lawrence isn't that bad. John Kreese gets really upset, right? And he starts to choke after the competition. He starts to choke Johnny Lawrence, his student. And the other students are like, yo, let him go. You're going to kill him. And Mr. Miyagi goes over there, helps out Johnny, right? And he's like, yeah, man, like he basically beats on John Kreese. So Mr. Miyagi beats up John Kreese, but at the end, like right before the last blow, he just does this thing with the nose where he's like beep, and he just leaves. So that's where the first movie ends. And then okay, so let me tell you about this idea I have about trilogies, which actually comes from the meta thriller movie Scream. I did a review on Scream, and I love those movies. Wes Craven, Friday the 13th, or not Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy Krueger, love those movies too. And everything Wes Craven's done, like The Last House on the Left. Well, anyway, in those movies, in the Scream movies, they talk about the order of trilogies, right? And I think there's even like an order for 4 and 5 movies, like the franchise, how they're supposed to go. So the first one's basically like setting everything up. You get to know the main characters, you get to know the context, where they are, what are they doing, what are their roles, right? And then the second movie, well, as far as thrillers go, thrillers and suspense movies, psychological thrillers, where there's a bad guy running around killing people, not like terror movies, like supernatural movies, but like things that could actually happen. Those are terror movies. So the first one is like there's deaths, and the second one there has to be more deaths, right? There have to be more deaths, more wild things going on. They have to outdo themselves from the first movie, right? The sequel has to outdo itself. So then the third movie, they say you always go back, right, to something that happened before the first movie, right? So you go like way back to either the protagonist or the main character's past, or some of the characters like past, right? In The Karate Kid, I think what they do is there are actually 5 movies. I haven't watched the 4th one because it's with a girl, and well, I just finished the first 3, which is the Natural trilogy, and the 5th one I think is with Jaden Smith, Will Smith's son. I haven't watched those either, but the 5th one I think and the 4th one don't have anything to do with the first 3, which are actually connected with the series, which is what I'm gonna watch next. So very important to watch the first 3 The Karate Kid movies, and then go into the series, right? The series is called Cobra Kai, which is still running, right? It's still going on. Okay, well, anyway, what The Karate Kid does is that the second movie is actually the movie about the past, about Mr. Miyagi's like past, right? Before The Karate Kid movie. And then the third movie is actually what the second movie should be, which is like, a little bit more complex, a little bit more like elaborate than the first one. Well, anyway, in the second movie, what ends up happening is that, well, they LaRusso becomes the All Valley champion in karate after he beat Johnny Lawrence and the Cobra Kai people. And but now we get a situation where, well, in the first one, we kind of get a little bit of context on Mr. Miyagi, who he is, where he comes from. So he's supposed to be this guy that fought in a war, right? And he got like a medal, but there were like problems during the war or something like that. So he ended up right there in I think it's Resina, California, or Resina. I'm not sure I'm saying that right. Let me know in the comments how you say that. But anyway, he ends up in California, and then he gets a letter from the girl that he was supposed to be with back in Okinawa, saying that his father is very ill, like his father is basically dying. And LaRusso's like what? Like, I didn't even know you had a dad, I knew nothing about you. So he's like, yeah, I gotta go. And LaRusso's like, well, I'm coming with you. And Mr. Miyagi's like, no, you're staying here. And he's like, bro, I'm coming with you. You need my help. Plus, I think LaRusso, this is where he takes his like journey, kind of like to really get in touch. And I think that may contribute to the series, where I haven't watched all of it, but I watched some episodes and some seasons, and he has this really like connection to Mr. Miyagi and to the Japanese tradition of martial arts. But I think it has a lot to do with the second movie, because he actually goes to Okinawa, where Mr. Miyagi's from, which is like this little town. And when they get there, they're like, where's Okinawa? Because like LaRusso's like all reading about Okinawan history. He's learning about it. He really wants to like experience Okinawa, right? And Mr. Miyagi's like all worried, so he's like, LaRusso's all like, where's Okinawa on the map, right? Like, it doesn't appear on this map. And they end up getting there, right, to Okinawa, and they see that there's like demolition, like these type of demolition people that are like building like something. And it was like a fishing community, so they were self-sufficient. But big business, big corporation is in town and everything. And then we get to hear the backstory, which is Mr. Miyagi actually left Okinawa because he was challenged to death, to like a karate fight to death, because of honor, from this guy named Sato. So Sato is the villain, you could say, of the second movie, where he's actually the rich owner of the corporation that is like making all these changes. And I think they portray big business also in the third movie as evil, right? Like, people that are with the corporation, that are rich and powerful, they're bad people, right? Like that's a recurring theme. And these movies are from the 80s, so the first one was 84, came out in 1984, the second one in 1986, and the third one in 1989. So they're all 80s movies. So anyway, when they're in Okinawa, Sato comes out and he's like, yo, you and me, we got beef. We got to settle this. And the reason that Sato is angry with Mr. Miyagi is because he liked the girl, which is actually the girl that sends the letter to Mr. Miyagi. He liked that girl, and he wanted to get with that girl. He wanted to marry that girl. And Mr. Miyagi actually thinks they're married, but she never married him because she liked Mr. Miyagi, right? So she like basically waited for him like all those years, and just sat by taking care of his father and by his father's side until his last breath. And Sato, it's interesting because Sato and Mr. Miyagi go way back. I mean, they used to be friends, and basically over a girl, was their fight, was their beef. So Mr. Miyagi's father took Sato in, and he actually also trained him in the arts of of karate. And that's why he's kind of there. That's why Sato's there. But he's doing all these things to the community, right? Now, I would say the second one is kind of like Mr. Miyagi's movie. There's a lot happening. There's a lot happening with LaRusso too, where he's like exploring. Sato has this student of his also, these movies are based a lot on teachers and their students. So Sato has a student whose name is Chosen, and with a Z, Chosen. And Chosen, he's like a bully. He's like Johnny Lawrence was in the first one. So he's picking fights with Mr. Miyagi and with LaRusso, kind of like saying like, what, you want to fight? And we have LaRusso in Okinawa, and Chosen works there. So he's like doing things with the locals where he's buying their products or buying their vegetables or something like that. But he has the weights like off, and LaRusso realizes this, I think by accident, and he makes him look bad. He makes Chosen look bad. So then Chosen gets all angry and he starts bullying him. Now, while this is going on, there's a girl there. Let me find her name. I think her name is Kumiko, and Kumiko is I'm not sure who she's related to, but she's we can say LaRusso's love interest in this movie. So she basically starts to teach him like, all about the culture. They drink tea, which is like a ritual that they do in Okinawa when two people like each other, which actually Mr. Miyagi does with when he reconnects with the girl that was supposed to be his wife in Okinawa. And yeah, so all of that is like really interesting, how LaRusso's like getting deep into the culture, and realizing what the traditions are based on and everything. And then but yeah, so we have the Mr. Miyagi and Sato beef. So then they're about to fight like in Okinawa in the village. And just when that happens, the Mr. Miyagi's love interest like comes out, and she's like, "Hey, your dad wants to talk to both of you. Get your asses inside." So they go inside, and dad is there, and Sato gets on one side and Mr. Miyagi on the other side, or I think they're both there with the dad, and the dad dies, and Sato, I think the dad, before he dies, he's basically like, yo, both of you like chill out, like what the hell are you doing? But he dies, and Miyagi, he's like, what the hell, like he's sad. And Sato's like, you got 3 days, I'm giving you 3 days to mourn, and then it's you and me, right? So he's like set in his ways. He wants to fight Miyagi because of honor, because that's really important in Japan, as you may know. So he's like, yeah, you got 3 days, and it's you and me, right? So they mourn the death of Miyagi's father. Sato and Miyagi are there. All the people are there, like it's like, yeah, like the death, we all have to come together and whatever. And then, well, there's a lot going on between LaRusso and Chosen and Sato and Miyagi, during those 3 days. And then they end up, deciding, yeah, we're going to fight, midnight on this day. So they decide they're gonna fight, but then there's a typhoon, there's a hurricane that goes on in the village, and basically Sato gets trapped under this like dojo that he was in, and when he gets trapped there, Mr. Miyagi and LaRusso come to aid him, and it's funny because he thinks that they're there to like pounce on him. His student Chosen actually leaves him behind, and he's like, yo, he's dead, and he leaves, but he's not dead. He was just under like the house that came down, or the little dojo that came down. So they rescue him, they take him to a shelter where like all the village people are grouped together, while the hurricane's like breaking shit and moving shit around. There's a lot of wind and rain. And there's a little girl. There's a little girl that actually like rang the alarm bell, for the village people to take shelter. And there's like a flyer going around, and like she's stuck like up on something, and they're like, yo, we gotta go save that little girl. So then LaRusso and Miyagi, being the nice people that they are, they go and help out the girl. And then Sato tells Chosen, his student, right, like the bad guys, he tells him like, yo, you gotta go help that little girl. But then Chosen's like, he's scared, so he's like, no, I'm not going out there. I'm gonna get killed. And it's like, bro, you got, what about, you're like a fighter, you're a bully, like, aren't you, strong enough to just go save a little girl up a pole? And LaRusso ends up saving the little girl. And then Sato tells Chosen, when Larusso brings back the little girl, like, you're dead to me, like, you've dishonored me. So then Chosen leaves, he like crying, like, ah. Well, he's not crying, but he's like leaves out of there because he's ashamed or whatever. And because Miyagi saves Sato's life, Sato forgives. Like, he basically, says, okay, we're gonna rebuild the village. You and me, we have no more beef. We're back to being friends because it's like now, like, I almost owe you because you saved my life, right? And there was some type of place around there. I don't know what to call that place, but it was a place that was, I guess they were taking things from there to sell to museums like abroad, right? So that was the corporation of Sato, and then they asked him like, "Yo, that's where we used to have like this party like every year, right? We used to have celebrations there. So can we reopen that place up and have our party like we used to?" And that's where Kumiko's dance rituals, because she's like a dance teacher. That's where her rituals come in, and they have this party, and it's all good. But then Chosen shows up, right? I think he wants to like kill Kumiko, and he wants to fight Larusso. So he's like, you and me, you disgrace me, and all of this. And it's like, Chosen, you're crazy, man. You were a coward. But during in these movies, there's always like some type of move that they have to that Larusso learns. Like in the first one, it's this type of like ego kick, and in the second one, it's like this thing where he has to like basically dodge like the attacks that are coming at him. So like he does that at the end, and he has Chosen like this, and Chosen's philosophy was either fight. No, it was, I don't remember what it was. It was like fight or die or something like that. And he's like, fight or die. Larusso tells him when he gets him, and he's like, die. He's like, yeah, like kill me. I don't care. Like, and then he just does the nose thing that Miyagi did in the first one to John Kreese, and the movie ends right there. Like I said, the second one, a lot going on, pretty interesting. But yeah, now we're getting to the third one. In the third one, so they relive basically, like at the beginning of each movie, they kind of show you scenes from the last movie, or from the last two movies in this case. And it's interesting because this one has to do more with John Kreese. So we go back to John Kreese, like he's devastated, because he's lost students, he has bills to pay, he's doing bad. John Kreese, he feels bad after he lost in the first movie. Remember, John Kreese is the teacher of Johnny Lawrence, the first one from the first movie, and he was like the villain of the first movie. So in this one, he goes to his boss, who is Terry Silver. I would say Terry's probably like my favorite character out of all these movies, just because of the way he thinks, the way he talks, and he becomes the villain of this one. So working with John Kreese. So John Kreese is like, yeah, man, I'm out. I have no students. I have a lot of bills. Like, I don't know what to do. I'm just gonna leave. And Terry's like, no way, man. Like, you get yourself a vacation, first of all. Oh, because I forgot to mention, Terry Silver is fucking rich. He's super rich. And like I said, he's this mega businessman who does things with, I think he dumps like radioactive waste into lakes or something. So he's doing bad things, right? But he's super rich. So he's like, yeah, I'm going to send your ass to Tahiti for some vacation time, right? And let me take care of the planning. I'm going to take care of the planning. So he kind of does this incognito thing where he buys like some broken down cars. He pretends to be like, just an average Joe, and he infiltrates himself with that's why I say like he's an interesting character, like the way he thinks and the things he does. He shows up to Miyagi and Larusso, right? Like just this innocent person, right? Like, oh, I come from this dojo in South Korea, and he says that he knows John Kreese, and that he's sorry for John Kreese's like behavior, in the first movie. And they're all like, yeah, man. And then he tells them that John Kreese died, right? Which is not true. He's still alive. He's in Tahiti, remember? But he says, yeah, he died, so like, oh yeah, rest in peace, whatever. Like, he starts playing with them psychologically. So then he leaves. So it's interesting because just as John Kreese is leaving to Tahiti to take his vacation at the airport, at that same airport, like the scene goes like this, and then Mr. Miyagi and LaRusso are coming out of the airport, and they're coming back from their trip to Okinawa, which I thought was like a very nice creative scene. So then the story of LaRusso and Miyagi at first, I thought it was kind of choppy because it goes like, okay, yeah, we have here LaRusso, and LaRusso's basically supposed to be in college now, but and with his mom, because he remember he lived with his mom, but he was in Okinawa for some time. So he gets back with his mom. I mean, he doesn't get back to his mom. His mom is taking care of a sick uncle, so they're kind of like, yeah, you can just stay with Mr. Miyagi, and I'm gonna be with your uncle, taking care of your sick uncle. So see you. And the mom is out of the picture, and he's supposed to get into college, but they end up going to their apartment complex, and they see that it's being torn down. So Mr. Miyagi loses his job, loses his, well, basically just his job, because he has a house which is basically like his dojo where he trained LaRusso in the first movie. So, LaRusso goes to live with him, but LaRusso has his university money. So he says, I'm going to use my university money to set you up a shop, right? To set you up this bonsai. And the third movie, I would say it's all about the bonsai. The bonsai is symbolic in many ways, which is this tree. And that doesn't grow in the United States, I think, or at least not in California, because they have to bring one from Okinawa, I think. Mr. Miyagi brought one. But anyway, he tells Mr. Miyagi, like, I'm gonna help you out. I'm gonna get you, your bonsai place, your dream. This is Mr. Miyagi's dream, right? And Mr. Miyagi's like, no, you're going to university, you're going to college, right? But he does it anyway. So you can start to see that from the third movie, because you can kind of say that in the third movie, LaRusso kind of goes bad. And this is the analysis I'm gonna get into at the end of the video. So he says, no, I'm gonna get you your place. He gets him his place against Miyagi's wishes. And he sets up shop. He's like, yeah. And Mr. Miyagi's like, what about college? What about the university? And he's like, man, I've been in school since I was 5. Like, I need to take a break. And it's funny because the actor is 28 in this movie, but he has a young face, so he actually looks like he could be like 20, right? So he sets up, Mr. Miyagi's bonsai place. Across the street is this like place where they make pottery, and he meets Jessica, but Jessica is not a love interest in this movie. Jessica's only like a friend, right? Because she has a boyfriend, so she makes that clear. Which rumor has it is because the actors were, they weren't underage. Like, she was underage, and LaRusso's actor was 28, so they couldn't really, I guess, mingle in the movie. So they just become friends. But then Terry Silver's plan to take down, to get revenge for John Kreese, his plan starts, marching on. He infiltrates himself, with Miyagi and LaRusso. And then he just like, smoothly like starts to be like, oh, hey, like, what's going on? Like, do you need help with your karate and all this stuff? And LaRusso's like, oh yeah, sure. Like, he's a nice guy, right? But in the meantime, Terry Silver, he hires some goons. He hires like the best karate person in town. And I have his name right here. Mike Barnes, with 2 other goons, excuse me. So then they start to plan, how to get back at LaRusso, because they want him to join the competition, which he won a year ago, according to the movies. So they say, you're going to join the competition because we need to beat the champion, so we can be the champions, right? And LaRusso wants to at first, but then he gets talked into by Mr. Miyagi not to join. Then a bunch of stuff happens, and they eventually get him to sign, right? But like, he kind of has a fallout with Mr. Miyagi, and Mr. Miyagi's like, he's not really doing much in this movie. I mean, he hasn't really done much, but I would say he does the least in the third one because, LaRusso's going through all these things, and Miyagi is just kind of like, yeah, like peace and meditation and shit. And it's kind of like, no, I don't think that's going to work here because LaRusso's going through some stuff, and he becomes like, throughout the whole movie, he becomes really impulsive. Like, he starts doing things that just kind of like spring into his mind, and then he complains about why he's getting into all these type of different messes, and it's because he's being so impulsive and he's making rash ass decisions. So then what ends up happening is that the bullies, that Terry Silver hired, affect LaRusso. And, it's interesting to see how Terry Silver sets up like two or three different scenarios and situations in which he provokes these things, but then he comes in and he's like, LaRusso, I'll help you out, right? So he's like, I'll train you. And remember, this is Cobra Kai, so we can say, because in the series there's like a mixture, and I think they eventually make peace, and they say, okay, Miyagi's good, but if you only have Miyagi, that's only good. You need to be a little, and this is kind of like the shadow work. You need a little bit of Cobra Kai. You need a little bit of that, so you get that balance between the two energies. So Terry Silver, but remember, Terry Silver wants revenge. So he starts to train LaRusso. He's like, yo, you gotta kick these like pieces of wood, right? And he hurts his leg and his foot and his hand. And yeah, so it's kind of bad for LaRusso, but he's like, yeah, you have to, you have to be tough. The Cobra Kai mentality, right? Like, strike first, no mercy, no weakness, right? And LaRusso, like, he eventually gets into that vibe because he beats up this guy at a party. And then Terry at the end, like towards the end, he comes out and he's like, yeah, like, we were really tricking you. John Kreese is not dead, he's right back there, and he comes out, and then he brings out the bully, which was Mike Barnes. He brings out Mike Barnes, and he's like, yeah, we're gonna pounce on you, kid, like revenge time. And then Miyagi comes in, and he fights, which I thought that's probably like the most well, it was an interesting fight between Miyagi and Terry Silver. But again, Miyagi doesn't fight. He just kind of like, dodges the attacks. And he eventually leaves. They enter the competition. And, I thought it was kind of stupid, but LaRusso ends up winning, in a sudden death. In sudden death, he ends up winning with one shot. When in reality, the whole match, he got his ass beat by Mike Barnes, right? Which is the student of Terry Silver and John Kreese. So I didn't really like the ending because I think he didn't deserve to win. I mean, he didn't fight that well, and the tactic throughout the third movie is kata, and kata is like this dance where they're just like, kind of like avoiding the blows and the attacks. Again, the Miyagi philosophy is really just dodging I wouldn't even say it's defense. It's like avoiding. It's complete avoidance of fighting, I guess. And yeah, like I think in the spectrum between good and evil, like, the Karate Kid movies are in the good side, because the good is really good. The good is like doesn't do anything ever. It's like super passive. And the bad, I mean, it's not that bad, but I did like the type of manipulation that, because I think about the shock that, Miyagi and LaRusso must have felt when they saw John Kreese, Terry Silver, and Mike Barnes together, because it's not only like, he lied to us about John Kreese being dead. He's here, alive, and ready for revenge, ready to take his revenge on us. But he's working. He hired Mike Barnes, the other bully that's been bullying LaRusso all this time. Just the betrayal they must have felt. So that's when Miyagi decides to train LaRusso for the competition, for the tournament. And you could say, well, it was really because he did feel betrayed, because, it's like, man, like, we thought you were cool. but it turns out you're really behind all of this. And where does that, where is that justified? If you're so good, why don't you just let that go? But they do say, like, you either fight us once at the tournament or you're gonna fight us every day of your life. But well, like, what, Miyagi doesn't talk, so you don't really know where he's coming from, and all his teachings always have this, like, they have all these layers to it, where it's like you need, and I would even dare say he says a lot of cliche things that don't really make sense. But LaRusso's all for it. Like, LaRusso's like his loyal, student. And but I did think that he needed that balance, because he learns about, how bad people could be, how much revenge they would want. And you do have to, I mean, I think the only way to really learn about it is to experience it, experience that betrayal, experience bad people. And it doesn't mean that you have to be bad, but it means that you have to acknowledge the bad that is out there in order for you to be careful, right? So I think that's where that balance between Miyagi and Cobra Kai philosophy comes in. Cobra Kai is an extreme, and Miyagi is another extreme. And I think what the movie and maybe the series tries to say is that, well, I don't think the movies do, but the series does go as far as to say, like, you need that balance. You need to be here, but basically we come from here, you could say, or we're here, we're in the innocence, we're nice people, right? But we experience bad things, and that experience of bad things, that contact of evil, and the unknown and the unpredictable, and the lies and the cheating, and the deception, like from Terry Silver, actually will help us be careful in life, right? Not to make rash decisions. When someone presents themselves as this, you should be wise to doubt that, and not to simply say, oh yeah, you're this nice guy who just came about, and you're nice because you say you're nice. No, like, there could be ulterior intentions, like there were totally with Terry Silver. So we have to be careful for that. I just want to say there's a trifecta in the Zodiac based on LaRusso, Miyagi, and Terry Silver, because of the actor's zodiac sign. So with LaRusso, you have a Scorpio, who's a water sign. With Miyagi, you have Cancer, who's also a water sign. And with Terry Silver, you have Pisces, who is also a water sign. So those three are the three water sign elements. And, I think as far as Terry Silver goes, there is that deception, that Pisces deception, where they can lie, but then they'll come out, right? And you'll discover the lies. Well, not the lies, but, like, I really liked it that LaRusso and Miyagi weren't paying attention, so they weren't able to discover Terry's lies. Terry Silver is actually the one who comes out and is like, yo, I've been lying to you, stupid asses, and you've been falling for it. I like that. And the loyalty, the hardcore loyalty from Scorpio, in this case of LaRusso, towards Miyagi, and Miyagi being Cancer, he's kind of like a father figure to LaRusso, because he treats him like his kid, right? So yeah, as far as the philosophy goes, I think you need both. The third movie, when you think about LaRusso being bad, you kind of think back to the third Spider-Man, the original trilogy, where I think Venom gets into it, and he kind of gets, emo and bad. And I think we all have that experience. I've talked about it in a bunch of my videos, where you need that shadow work, you need that other evil side in you to be able to grow, right, as a person. So that's all I got for this review. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.